Open up and you're going to ask me how I'm doing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Shane's Book Addiction by Kingdom of Honor. This week, we are going to discuss a book that he just read. It's called Jade City. And Shane, I I looked into this before we did this thing, and to be honest, I am kind of excited to hear what you have to say about this book and about this series. How's it going with you? I know that you had some issues last week that I don't know if you care to talk about, but we weren't able to do a show on Sunday.
Well, I didn't get hit. I didn't get hit this morning by swinging troll testicles, so I think I got to say I'm doing pretty good.
That was the worst description of what happened to you I've ever heard in my life. I just, what the,
Well,
what?
I I started reading this. Yeah, I know. I kind of I had like a really severe sprain or muscle. Or they said it could even be a micro tear of a tendon in my knee. Um, so I'm like kind of wearing like a leg brace so I can walk around like stably and without pain. So
15 minutes before we go to we go live,
yeah,
I get a text message. This is on Sunday, and I'm kind of glad that we didn't, and not because we didn't have a ton of wrestling to talk about, but more so because we were going to discuss Shadow and Bone, which is another novel that it was made into a TV series, and we are going to discuss it tomorrow. But I'm really glad that we decided to go with the full series as opposed to just the first four episodes because there's so much that happened in that final four episodes that changed what happened in the first four.
yeah, it definitely did, and actually, we can talk about this tomorrow more, but it's actually not the novelization of Shadow and it's not. It's actually not the Shadow and Bone novel turned into a TV show.
Yeah, it's kind of a loose interpretation from what I was reading.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
loose interpretation, but also she's got a second sequel series that's set in the same world, and they kind of combine the two.
oh,
So,
nice. Okay. Yeah,
uh,
and we'll discuss more about that later. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that we get to talk about that tomorrow. But anyway, 15 minutes before we went live to watch Shadow and Bone, I get a text message saying, "Hate to do this, buddy, but I'm going to the ER.
yeah.
We gotta cancel." And I'm like, "What? Wait, what?
Well, I
What?"
had woken up that morning. My leg was super swollen. I could barely walk, and I was like, "Yeah, I better get this checked out." So,
Yeah, so apologize for missing last week, but unfortunately, sometimes, as you know, with this show, life definitely gets in the way and gets in the way in a hurry, because we've unfortunately had to do that a few times. But if you ever do our Jonesing for Kingdom of Honor, you can always check out the other shows that are on our YouTube channel. Or our Patreon. And I am reworking our Patreon, a lot of free content up there. There's going to be some exclusive stuff that we're doing, and now with my life settling down a little bit for the next couple of months, and I know Shane's kind of in the same job description, so his might settle down too. Maybe we'll do some more of those exclusive Desert Island series that we were doing. I know there's a few wrestlers that have been recommended that we talk about, and I wouldn't mind. There was one that came up, and to be honest, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, did he really have any great matches?" But then I thought more and more about it, and the guy had a hell of a career and a lot of memorable moments. And that's Diamond Dallas Page.
yeah, yeah, he did.
So, we'll discuss that more, but right now we're discussing this book and what Shane thought of this book. And because I didn't read this book, I'm really looking forward to this because after last week I got kind of excited about where we go and how we can make the show, more entertaining and everything. And just listening to you talk about the way these books came out, and the stories and everything got me excited to find out more about books. I'm not dedicating my life to reading yet. That's we got a little time for that, but I'm definitely interested in seeing where these go. And like I said, I checked out the Jade City story, and it sounds fascinating.
It is, and I'm going to try to say um, when we review these books like how I consumed them because as you talked about last week, I very rarely actually sit down and like pick up a paper copy of a book and read it these days. So it's either going to be on my Kindle or it's going to be in this case with Jade City. It was done. I listened to it on audiobook. Um, and if you look at Goodreads or you look at Amazon, this book has a super high score, like it's like right around 5 or like 4.5 something stars. Um, I think it's slightly overrated. Okay,
Okay.
slightly. Um, the reason I say that is because I think I talked about this last week. I'm quite a bit of a character driven story type reader. That's what I prefer to plot driven stories. And for a lot of this book, it didn't feel like this was either one of them. For those who don't know, and for those who didn't listen to last week's show where I mentioned it, Jade City is by Fonda Lee, who originally was a YA author, kind of like Lee Bardugo, who wrote the Shadow and Bone books that we're talking about the TV show of yesterday, and then she kind of graduated, you know, if you want to put it that way, to adult instead of young adult.
To real
Um,
books.
and this is her. Well, I don't know. Do you not consider Harry Potter real books? No, I
I
guess
well,
so.
yeah, I guess. As
Yeah,
soon as I said that, I was like, oh wait a minute, Hunger Games was, said that was the my all-time favorite story.
yeah,
So, and Hunger Games was a young adult book as well.
right, exactly. Um, so, so this is kind of her like graduation into just regular adult books, and it is also her version of The Godfather. Um, you know, in Jeff, there are basically two. Well, there are. I shouldn't say basically. There are two film trilogies where every single one of the movies in the trilogy was nominated for Best Picture. You know what those two trilogies are?
Well, I know The Godfather was one, and I thought Star Wars was one as well.
No, The Lord of the Rings was the other one.
Lord of the Rings, okay. I know Star Wars, the first two were nominated, but I couldn't remember if Jedi was.
Yeah,
Obviously, it
so
wasn't.
Godfather, all three were nominated. The first two won Best Picture, right? And those were also based on a book. They were based on a book by Mario Puzo. And so basically, The Godfather is where Fonda Lee kind of took her inspiration for this story, but also not just The Godfather, also Asian culture and Asian mythology. Because even though she is Canadian, she's also of Japanese descent. And so she kind of combined all that together to create this mystical, Godfatherish world, and it's kind of set in that same time frame too, like the late 70s, early 80s, where there's no, because there are cars and there are machine guns, right?
Right.
But there are no cell phones, and there's even times where characters talk about they're on the phone and they're holding the phone cord in their hands. So it's kind of in that same era, but in a fictional world, in a fictional Asian culture, and where Jade um, can give organic bio organic jade, I think is how they term it, can give people special powers. And people that live in Janloon, which is there where the story takes place, the country that the main characters live in, that's where the jade is from, and that's where what are called the green bones are trained how to use it. And there are also stone eyes who don't have any kind of jade sensitivity whatsoever. And then there's also a drug that can give people that are not from that country, or even the stone eyes that don't have the ability to use the jade.
Okay.
Um, so then that's kind of where everything is headed here. Is we have these two clans that are the two largest clans. Basically, the whole country is divided into like clans of mafia kind of thing, right? Just like
So,
kind of like The Godfather.
yeah, we're kind of going Chicago 1950s or actually, I think a better description would be Chicago in the that or not Martin Luther King, Judas and the Messiah movie that we talked about, where it was divided into four territories.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah. And the two biggest clans are the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan. The Mountain clan can holds about, I think they said about 45% of the country, and No Peak holds about 39% of the country. So between the two of them, they hold 84% of the country. Um, and then there's a few other smaller ones out there. And our protagonists are in the No Peak clan, so the second biggest one. And the Mountain clan is trying to take over everything, basically all the Jade operations. They want to turn the whole country into one big clan, and they also are wanting to export that drug to other countries and the Jade to other countries so that they make a whole bunch of money doing it.
So let me kind of jump in here a little bit because you mentioned a couple of uh, clans that I just read the description again. So, and the main description, and of course I went to Goodreads to read the description. They gave it a 4.08 rating. Jade City is a gripping Godfather-esque saga of intergenerational blood feuds, vicious politics, magic, and kung fu. I read that description. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm in. But they talk about in the remainder of the description, they talk about the Call family, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, but Kaul, the Call family, as being what almost seemed like, a crime syndicate, but when you read the description of them, they almost seem like the good guys. They're involved in commerce, construction, everyday upkeep of the district that's under their protection, things like that. They almost come across as the good guys. Now, when you were explaining the protagonist, which one is the Call family? Are they the one that's trying to take over, or are they the big one?
No, the Call family, they're the second biggest clan. They're the heads of the No Peak clan, the second biggest clan. And like you said, they're kind of like the good guys, and they are the good guys of our story, right?
Okay.
But they're also kind of like the good guys of the country because they're trying to stop anybody from monopolizing the jade. They're trying to stop the drugs from being sold outside the country, kind of, which is similar to how, if you remember from the Godfather movie, how the main I can't remember the name of the mafia family, but they were trying to stop the cocaine from being sold in the country, right?
Right.
So kind of the same situation there. And they also, like you said, they're more benevolent.
You know,
Both of them will, both clans, will, support their people that are paying tribute to them. If, like, for instance, if your restaurant was paying tribute to them and was in their neighborhood and caught fire, then they would still fund them, like, to be rebuilt and that kind of thing.
to steal a line from my favorite YouTube show, crime families that do good stuff is tight.
Exactly. You know,
And the
it's
Godfather name is the Corleone family.
the Corleones. That's it. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, Michael Corleone. I should remember that. Um, and so yeah, I mean, it's a really fascinating take on the whole situation, right? And, and yeah, so we have the Nil Peaks who, um, it kind of as it starts out, we see where there's we basically have five main point of view characters here. We've got Beru, who starts out with, who is just kind of a petty nothing. As the book starts, I'm saying kind of a petty nothing kind of street criminal but he's trying to steal some jade from the No Peak clan to try to become try to become a green bone, which is what they call, which is again the term for people that live in Janloon who are able to use the jade to give themselves these special powers that are then amplifying, their other training. Um, we have, and that's kind of how it starts off, as we see him and a buddy of his trying to steal some jade to be able to use it for their own purposes. If they were able to then also get some of the, I think it's called SG1 or something. No, it's not SG1. That's a stupid TV show. It's something S1. Maybe it's MS1. The drug that they can use to make themselves able to use the jade. And
So
then we go ahead.
just backtrack here because I'm trying to kind of piece this together as we're going. The island itself that they're on, Kyoken, I believe it was. I should have wrote it down, but uh, yeah, Kikon um,
Yep.
is where this is all taking place. And native people to Kikon, they have the ability to use the jade. Anybody outside of Kikon, they need this special drug to be able to use it. Is that kind of where
Many
I'm
people,
going?
yeah, many people in Keykone have the natural ability to use it, but not all of them. And the ones that can't are called stone eyes.
Stone Eyes. All right,
And then
good.
even the ones that are able to use it may not have all been trained how to use it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense. Now that's
And,
kind of where I wanted to back up and figure this part out.
and if you haven't been trained how to use it, then chances are if you try to use it, then you might end up driving yourself mad.
Oh, being driven mad by not being able to use the good stuff is tight.
Oh my God. You gonna keep doing that?
I watched a marathon this morning. I think I watched like 8 in a row.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. And then yeah, so that's what this Barrow guy is. He's trying to become a green bone and trying to become a big deal in the country by stealing some jade from the No Peak clan.
Okay. All right. Sounds, I mean, I'm
And
intrigued. Like, if this was a TV series, I'd be sitting there going glued to it, binging it all day long, to be
right,
honest.
and that's what I thought too. That's when I heard this about this stuff, I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. And you said Goodreads has showing it as a 4.8. Is that what you said?
4.08, so just
Okay,
over a 4.
okay, so that's about where I'm at with it too. I thought, listening to it, again, I didn't read it, I listened to it, and I thought the narrator did a decent job, but it was just kind of the way, how like when you're reading a book or you're reading a series of books, or even watching a TV show or a movie,
Right.
so we're like a lot of it is kind of setting up for the future, right?
Right.
You have to, that first episode or two is kind of a lot of setup, and that's why you and I have talked before that you got to give a show at least like 4 or 5 episodes before you can really decide. Yeah, I don't like that show, right?
Oh,
Because you don't know where it's going. Um, and and that's kind of where I was with this one, where I was like, okay, so this is enough to keep me intrigued. I'm not going to not finish the book, but I'm not sure it's something I'm going to want to keep on with after this book because it's not really resonating strongly with me. Like I was probably at like around a 3.5 level for the first 55 to 60% of the book, right?
oh wow.
And it just because it was a lot of setup, that you didn't really get into the head of the characters. There was a few parts um, where it was a little bit disjointed, and I wasn't sure like where it was going. So that's why like but then after a certain event happens, and I'm not going to say what the event is, 'cause I'm not going to spoil it for those who may want to read it. But after a certain event happens, all of a sudden the action picks up. You start getting more in the head of these characters. You start caring more. Um, it just keeps driving and driving and driving. And so that second like 40% of the book or whatever is like 5 stars to me. So
Hmm.
so that's why I'm kind of looking. That's why I kind of looked and I'm like, yeah, I think I would average this out to being a 4 star book. You know,
Well, we discussed this, last week, and I said then one of the things I like about novelists, especially novelists that do series, they're not trying, their whole life work isn't being played out on a 15 episode TV show or in a opening movie or the first album by the artist. Their life work is something that they set up is going to be, this is going to be a story I'm going to tell over multiple books.
right?
So, when you're looking at the first half of the first book kind of being set up and, maybe moving a little slow, that sounds about right for what I would expect out of a multiple series book.
It does, and I see your point with that. I guess my thinking is more it's not how a lot of the book series that I really end up enjoying a lot usually go. Like, I mean, if I think back to like A Song of Ice and Fire, which has never been finished, probably never will be finished, right? We saw it as a Game of Thrones movie, but it's or a TV show, but it's never the book series probably will never be finished.
Right.
But if I think back to A Game of Thrones, the first book in the series, I was hooked, pretty much right away for the first couple of chapters. If I think to Mistborn, the Final Empire, I was probably hooked 3 or 4 chapters in.
Well,
If let me keep going.
okay, I'm sorry.
If the book I series I said was my favorite of all time last week, Faithful and the Fallen, I was like, I kept reading and I was like, man, this is so dull and boring. And that was like 120 pages in to that first book of like 600 pages. All of a sudden, like it took off, and I really enjoyed it from then on. So so for me, for the first book to take almost more than half of it before I really started caring what was going on, I can look back and appreciate what she was doing, how she was world building and setting it and putting all the puzzle pieces there and setting it all up. But because that first part of it was not quite catching my interest and peaking for me, I still have to rate the whole book as only being a 4-star book because it's not something where I'm going to want to go back and I don't. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to ever go back and listen to it again. I probably will at some point, but it's not something where I'm like dying to go back and like reread and say, okay, so this happened there, this happened there, this happened there. That's where they set up, and I want to reread that again right away to make sure I didn't miss anything. It's not that kind of a feeling for me.
Well,
So
and see,
that's why looking at the whole book, I can't really say it's a 5-star book.
and that's where I was kind of going, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but where I was kind of going there was when I'm looking at this description, this isn't like a Harry Potter where we meet the wizard and off we go. This isn't like a Lord of the Rings where we find out there's a ring that needs to be brought someplace and thrown in a volcano, so off we go. This
Hmm.
is a book where there's so many multiple layers. Like we have to establish the crime syndicate, first of all.
Hmm.
The Call family, why are they the good guys? Why are we cheering for them? And then, we get that established, and then we got to look into the magic and the kung fu and and all this stuff. So I can see where she's building multiple layers that all needs to be addressed before you can really get into the meat of the story.
And this is really and the interesting part here is like if you think about you've seen The Godfather, right, John?
Oh, a million times.
Okay, so you know um, how Don Corleone is, he's got Sonny as his number two, right? Sonny is the guy that is going to take over for him eventually,
Mm,
but he's not necessarily that fond of Sonny, right? He loves him, but really it's his youngest son Michael that's kind of the apple of his eye, right?
right.
And that's kind of where we're at really when this book starts is the Torch of Kacon, Khal Sen, who is the he's basically the greatest green bone in history. He's the patriarch of the No Peak clan, and he has already at the as this book starts has turned over kind of the reins of the clan to Kalan um, about 8 years ago. But he's still kind of like in the background and like he's like but Kalan like isn't really in charge because if he makes a decision that Call Sen doesn't like, then Sen's like, no, I don't approve of that. You know what I mean? And then his middle grandson is he's kind of the head of like the active or like the policing force or like the military arm of the clan. But then his youngest and only granddaughter, call Shay, is really who he would prefer to be. That's his favorite. That's who he would prefer to be. You know, his confidant or who he really would like to be in charge if he really could make that decision.
So and I never.
And also just like Michael, Shay has no interest in being part of the family business.
Well,
So,
I never understood that about The Godfather too. And I kind of got it when, like you said, Michael had no interest, but you're the freaking Godfather. Can't you pick who your successor is going to be, or is there some like age-old law where it's like kingship, where it's the firstborn male, that's who it's going to be? I mean,
I think
I don't get it.
well, I think in the Godfather world, there's all that jealousy and that kind of paranoia stuff kind of going on, right?
Right.
Where maybe you feel like, well, if I don't give Sonny his chance, I might be getting a bullet in my head from him.
I suppose there is that. I guess I never realized that in hierarchy.
But also like Michael, Michael didn't really have any interest in being part of in being part of the crime side of the family. He was the one that was going to be educated and he was going to go off and like be a lawyer and that kind of stuff. Remember before all that stuff
Oh
happened?
yeah, yep.
And then the middle son there, he was kind of a dumbass out in Vegas, like doing kind of like stuff out there. can't remember that. I can't remember what his name was, but that was one that was played by De Niro. He was out kind of in Vegas, like doing um like second or third fiddle to their their made men out in Vegas. So he really wasn't going to be part of the running of the family either.
I thought I thought De Niro played Vito Corleone in the second one.
Vito, that's who it is. Yeah.
No, Vito's the big bad. I mean, he was Vito was played by Marlon Brando in the first one. Like he was the big bad. And then I thought De Niro played him in the second one to show
Um.
his rise to power and how Vito became. Because the second one was a flashback to Vito's story.
No, the third one was.
No, the third one was where Michael Corleone ended up in Italy, and uh, the ending is where his daughter was killed on the steps of that.
Huh. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
any
Marlon Brando was Don Vito Corleone. He was the big bad in the beginning. James Caan played Sonny Corleone, and then Fred Corleone is the middle child that you're thinking about.
Yeah, Fredo. You're
Yeah,
right. Fredo is what I was thinking of. Yeah.
he's the jerk off that was just spending money and being all stupid.
Okay. So Bob De Niro did not play Fredo.
No, he was played by how was he played? It's somebody I've never seen before, a name I don't recognize. Which, when you consider an all-time classic like this,
Oh, John Cazale. John Cazale.
yeah,
Okay. My mistake. Okay.
yeah. So I mean, because Marlon, yeah, I mean Vito, Robert De Niro's portrayal, Godfather 2 was the best of the three, I thought. I mean, because that was we were watching Vito Corleone become the big bad and the dawn of the family and everything, and why Michael Corleone and Sonny were vying the way they were to make him happy.
Right. So yeah. So my mistake there. But yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is it's kind of the same kind of situation where you've got the capable oldest son kind of taking is kind of like in position to take over the family. The younger child, the younger child in this case, but in this case, it's the grandson. The youngest child really doesn't have any interest in it, even though they probably have, the most intellect and ability to do it. And then the middle one has faults that really make them kind of unsuited to be in that situation. You know, Make sense?
Poor middle child. They always get the shaft. Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a no. I do think this is a great book. It's just not the amazing book that I kind of thought it was going to be. But I'm really looking forward to starting the second one, Jade War. I'll probably start that one today or tomorrow. Again, in audiobook format on Audible, listening to that one and just seeing if they're able to keep if Fonda Lee's able to keep up the momentum from the end of the last 40% of Jade City into Jade War. And then Jade Legacy, the third book in the series, is scheduled to come out November 30th.
So basically, what you're saying is that you feel like this book would have done better by getting into the action a little bit quicker and maybe doing flashbacks here and there to explain the story, as opposed to spending the first 55% of it explaining the story, then getting into it.
Yeah, because they do make mention of events that have happened in the past, and I think it would have been nice to see like a little bit to have they actually have like kind of a memory of that happening and like how it actually happened rather than just like, for instance, like Hilo was mad at Shay for leaving. Okay, well, why? And how did that conversation go?
Right.
Or there's a part where um, I said I wasn't going to spoil anything, but let's just okay, guys. If you don't want to hear what happened to Lon or what happened, what the big event was that I'm talking about, just stop listening right now. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay, you've been warned. Um, so so Lon, I mentioned earlier that if you're not trained in how to use Jade, you could become overwhelmed by it and kind of be driven mad by it, right?
Right.
But there's also something where if you have too much jade and you have too much at one time or too much of an increase at one time, then it can have like a severe effect on both your mental and your physical state. So Lon, the pillar of the No Peak clan, who's now the head of the clan, is challenged to a duel by one of the Mountain Fists, which is kind of like their like the made men of the Mountain Clan, basically, or the No Clan. But this is and the Mountain Clan challenges Lon, and Lon beats him, and then if you beat your opponent, you get to take all their jade as your you're claiming their possessions as your victory, right? And so Lon does that and puts on all the other guys jade, and that makes him like jade sick, and he ends up where he's basically having to take the drug I mentioned in order to be able to compensate for the jade withdrawal type stuff that's going on with him. And my issue with that was not that it happened; it was that like all of a sudden they jump you forward 2 weeks later, and you're just wondering like what's going on with Lon. Instead of like having it actually progress, and you're seeing him struggle with that. Instead, they just kind of fast forward it. She fast forwards it to the future, and I'm like, and I'm like, what did she not write that scene, or did they just hard edit it out for some reason? And that was like one of the parts that I thought felt like really disjointed. Like, wait, we didn't even see that happen. Like, it's kind of like like show us, don't tell us type thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, and so that was a part that really I struggled with. And then shortly after that, like Lon he still has all that jade on because you might say, well, why doesn't he take off the jade, right? Well, because then he's going to look weak if he's not wearing that jade he just won. He's going to look weak for not wearing it, and he can't afford to look weak right now when they're in the middle of trying to stop this war from happening.
Hmm.
But he does end up getting he ends up getting killed by Barrow, who I mentioned is kind of like the nobody,
Right.
because he gets Jade weak, and even though he's able to fight off Barrow and survive Barrow attacking him with machine guns and stuff with his powers, he then collapses and falls into a river and drowns. So kind of
Wait, what?
a very yeah,
That's like
yeah,
that's like let's say Ray from the Star Wars universe went in, took out a entire battalion of stormtroopers, defeated Kyle Ren, and then slipped and fell on ice and cracked her head and died.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're kind of like, wait, huh? Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's what happens, and then so that the Hilo, who was the second oldest grandson, then he goes from being the horn to being the pillar, and basically his men found the machine guns there, found Lon's body, and were like, okay, so the mountain must have done this, when it really wasn't the mountain that did it. It was just that that young kid. Um, and so that's really what started the war, and that's how everything progresses, and just kind of starts building and building and building and building for that last 40% of the book. So
Well, it does. It definitely sounds interesting. And I know
it
we're up to that 30-minute mark, and but you know what? It's our channel, so we'll go as long as we want. Uh, but I know that we, kind of want to keep these a little bit shorter and everything. But I am intrigued by this book. I don't know how invested I am to read it. Maybe if I hear, the second part or something, but I could definitely see myself sitting down and watching this as a movie or a TV show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and if this, I thought I saw something about there actually did maybe sign this to be a movie,
Oh, all
uh,
right.
which I do really feel like it would work. I'm always a TV guy, Jeff. You know that, but
Oh yeah.
I really do feel like this would work better as like a 2 hour movie than it would be as a like 6 hour TV show.
Oh, I think it would have to be a two-parter, unless they figure out that intro with establishing the families and everything.
Yeah, maybe.
Because otherwise, you're looking at Godfather 2 that's going to be 4 hours long.
Well, see, but that's what I was kind of saying about the beginning is I don't feel like there's enough characterization for it to really have taken that long to get there. So I think with a movie they probably can do it faster.
Well, and that's where I think they could benefit from doing flashbacks. They could do that original, establishing of the characters and the crime syndicate and the magic and all that stuff. They could do it in flashbacks as opposed to devoting the first half of the movie to it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I
S-
mean, this it does sound interesting. There's a few, as we're talking about it, of course, Godfather came up as one. Mortal Kombat kind of came up as another reference point where I was, when you were talking, I'm like, hey, why do they, in every kung fu battle, why do they have to take whoever's power? Because you said, he took all their jade because he won. In Mortal Kombat, they win, they get the dragon mark. So it's kind of a similarity there. And there was another movie that you talked about. You were talking about stuff, and it kind of piqued my interest. Like, hey, I think I've seen that somewhere. I can't remember what it was now, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I did see that she's planning on after she finishes up, or after Jade Legacy comes out, she's actually going to write a novella that's going to be her version of Chinatown. So
Ooh,
that's really interesting too. Um,
Chinatown
I
with magic. I like it.
and if she keeps up this kind of stuff where it's like where she's like writing this crime stuff but focusing on the fantasy and just adapting movies, I'm kind of down with that idea, really.
Yeah, I mean, I
You
I wouldn't mind seeing a Scarface.
know,
With
or the Departed, right?
or that mountain of cocaine at the end of Scarface, but it's some kind of magical potion that just turns him into a super guy.
So my plan for the rest of this month is I'm going to listen to that Jade War, so I should be able to finish that this month.
Okay.
Maybe the next couple of weeks. Maybe we can talk about it like in 2 weeks.
I know
Um,
next week we're thinking about you'd mentioned a book called Who'll Stop the Rain.
Who Will Stop the Rain by Don Donovan, which is the first book in the Miami Crime trilogy.
Okay.
Um, and then, but I mean, as far as my reading for this month, so I started that Shadow of the Gods last Tuesday. I'm about 21% done, 22% done, and I'm like 4 days plus into it, right? So at that rate, I'll probably finish within like 18 days. I'm going to listen to Jade War, and then I'm going to finish up Sharp Ends, which is the Joe Abercrombie book of short stories, which I'm about halfway through after I read Shadow of the Gods, and then I probably will also try to get in, if I can, um, the fifth book of the Red Rising series on audiobook after I finish Jade War. So that's kind of my
Oh,
plan for
okay.
May. If I can actually get all that done and then start the Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, cool. If I can't, also cool. So
Okay. Well, it sounds like we've got enough to talk about for the next month. Um,
absolutely.
the so next week we'll cover Who'll Stop the Rain, and I don't know, you got a little preview on what that one's like?
It is a well, the way that my mom pitched it to me was if you thought that the cops in The Shield were bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. So
Ooh, interesting.
yeah.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to that. I know, guys, we've got changes going on with our Patreon a little bit at a time, but if you like what you hear, please hit the like button, or hit the subscribe button because we have a lot of content that comes on this channel, and then of course that notification bell to be able to listen to that content when it is live. Also, go over to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Kingdom of Honor. We have a lot of stuff on there that's I'm reorganizing and reworking a lot of free stuff. Basically, our entire archives back to 2014. So anything that has aired on either YouTube or a podcast station will be free up there. And then we do have some exclusive stuff that we create solely for the Patreon page, including some breakdowns of older pay-per-views. The thing I'm the most proud of is our Desert Island series, where we take a wrestler and look at there, and you heard me reference it earlier in this show. You take a wrestler and break apart their entire career. I'm actually excited to find out more on not only this book series, but also what we're talking about next week. So, Shane, I don't know if you have anything else to talk about, but yeah, I'm gonna start at least thinking about audiobooks now.
I do have one more thing to talk about. I just got a text from my wife, and I just want to say that unfortunately there's no more Schwing because unfortunately Tawny Katane passed away today.
Oh man, that kind of makes me sad.
Yeah, it does, and I wanted to kind of like pay just a little it's a little bit of tribute because not that I ever met her obviously, but I mean definitely she ride over the car in that wonderful Whitesnake video,
Right?
and I loved her in Wayne's World, so
Well, yeah, I mean, that's too bad.
yeah, so
Now
rest in
I'm
peace,
sad.
Tawny.
Now I'm sad. Um, so tomorrow, what was the description you used to when I asked you how you're feeling? Um,
Well, this is actually from a scene in Shadow of the Gods, but I said at least I didn't get slapped and knocked over by swinging troll testicles.
oh, Jesus. So unless that happens
Yes,
tomorrow,
it actually does happen in a scene in Shadow of the Gods. So,
unless that happens tomorrow, we'll be back at 9:30, 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time to discuss what turned out to be an excellent series in Shadow of the Bone, or Shadow and Bone. And then, of course, we got 2 weeks worth of wrestling talk to talk about. A lot of stuff went on AEW. We had, what was that? Was it Rebellion? What was the
yeah,
pay-per-view by Impact? Rebellion
Rebellion. Yep.
that happened. Impact had a surprise guest last night or on Thursday night this year or this week, so we got that to talk about. And oh my God, if I never see a blindfold match again, I will be the happiest man ever. Uh,
Did you actually watch it?
yeah, I watched the first night.
Uh,
I watched the first night yesterday, and Jay White is just I can't say enough about Jay White. And then Osprey on night two, my God. If those two aren't the best wrestlers in the world, I don't right up there with Kenny Omega, I don't know who is.
are you talking about from the not Dentaku, but the
No, Don Taco. Jay White and Tanahashi in night one, and then Shingo and Will Ospreay in night two.
okay, yeah, I haven't gotten to those two yet.
Oh my
I'm
God.
hoping to be able to watch them tonight. So,
I mean, I'm not going to say that they were five-star classics by any stretch, but I've been saying this about Kenny Omega now for a year and a half. It is such a treat to be able to watch him perform every single week. And as far as I'm concerned, he's probably the best performer and wrestler in the world right now, and has been for a couple of years. But I mean, if Will Ospreay and Jay White aren't at his level, they're nipping at his heels. Because it just watching Jay White is just such a treat. That man took a match that we've been hating, because of the way they're treating the Never title, and he made it into a fantastic match. Just fantastic.
yeah, it's really to the point where and you and I may have been here for a while, but I mean, if you don't think that the five best wrestlers in the world are in NJPW and AEW, you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. I mean,
And even with that, Impact might be the best wrestling product out there right
I
now.
see.
There's
I'm gonna pull
it's
back
so
a
damn
little on
entertaining. It's
Impact.
so damn entertaining.
I'm gonna
So,
pull back a
you know,
little bit on Impact because I have some qualms about some of the stuff they do, but I'm really liking their working with AEW and NJPW, and I like what they're doing. I like the fact, and I got to look a little more because I heard something last week that I haven't heard of since, but MLW might be watchable again too.
all I'm saying with Impact though is that when you combine the wrestling with the stories they're doing with also the announce team,
Oh, that
it's
announce
hard not to
team's
get
great.
excited watching that show. You
That
know.
that announce team is great. I could do without Mauro Ranallo. Uh, but we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow. But yeah, I
All right.
love Stryker and D'Lo are amazing together. Absolutely.
Exactly. That was my point. Is Striker and D'Lo together, and it's so reminiscent to me of Don West and Mike Tenay and their early days comment.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
not even just early days, but their first, I don't know, 6 7 years commentating together. How exciting they made every time
But
TNA was on the air.
D'Lo is able to do it without Don West, that Don West scream. D'Lo is able to make that excitement without, like Don West was a screamer. That's just what he was. He was a pitch man. He was a TV commercial pitch man, and he pitched. D'Lo can still bring that level of excitement without screaming into the mic the whole time.
Right, but I'm not saying they're exactly the same. I'm
No,
saying
no,
it's reminiscent.
and I agree with you. I guess that would probably be the best comparison.
and it's great to have that back instead of Josh Matthews.
Ugh, ugh.
Although when he was with his wife, that was really entertaining as well. Just
And
not in just the same level of entertaining.
and when he
You know?
was with Don Callis made some digs that were pretty humorous. So, all right, so
Yeah.
that's guys,
I
that's
because you said that I just have to like reemphasize my favorite thing that Don Callis said to him was when Madison Rain was coming out, and he's like, and Matthews was like, why does Madison Rain so miserable all the time? And Josh and Don Callis said to him, well, she must not be happy at home.
yeah, there was some he had some good digs throughout his run with Josh that were whenever Madison Rain came out, they would talk about her husband and how, how worthless he is and things like that. It made me laugh every time. And even when Madison was there was a Netflix and chill line that he had, impact and
Yeah,
chill, and he goes, "Not in this lifetime." Madison said
yeah,
that to him.
exactly.
Yeah, so they were great together. But um, we'll talk about all that wrestling and Shadow and Bone tomorrow. Today, I guess that is all we have, Shane. Unless you got
It
more.
is.
All right, well,
No,
guys,
it is just guys, just do some reading. That's all I'm going to say is do some reading.
and do more than subtitles like I do. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.
Adios.
Bye now.